Welcome to A Wealthy Life. My name's Vicky Boucher and I'm the host. The aim of this show is to help you pinpoint your values and create a plan to live your version of a truly wealthy life, doing more of what you want, more of what you love, with those that matter to you most. And that will take time, money, and control to create this life of your dreams. I've had times when I've had to track literally every penny, shouldering massive debt. And then, after being made redundant and a divorce, I decided I needed to create an independent source of income, something away from traditional employment. I began investing in 2004, and during the property crash of 2009-10, I bought on average 1 to 2 properties a month. After just 2 years of focused investment, I'd secured my financial future. By 2013, I'd been recognised by The Telegraph as one of the UK's top 25 most influential people in property. I've authored 5 books, and property investment has been my ticket to a life of financial security, fun, freedom, adventure, great holidays. It's a life guided by my values and not societal norms. So why not subscribe now and become inspired to create your own wealthy life? Hello and welcome to another episode of A Wealthy Life. My name's Vicky Boucher, and today joining me, I am very, very fortunate to have the wonderful Rachael Troughton. You will know her as a repeat visitor because she is packed full of valuable experience and lots of knowledge. Rachael, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Vicky, so much for that lovely introduction. That's lovely. Set me up for the day.
Set you up for the day. Absolutely. So we're going to be talking about a bit of a thorny issue here, which is working with either a family member, a partner, or the husband in the property business. And we're going to morph this at the end of this. So stay with us. We're going to morph this into the differences with joint ventures at the end. So starting at the front end, you and I both started our property journeys on our own. I then started to work with my sister, and then I met Bob and we started to work together. And you've done something similar with Jeremy, haven't you? If you want to share that bit.
Yeah. I started off on my own. He was in the army, and then when he retired from the army, he then joined me doing what we did in property. But I have to say straight away, before we go any further, what absolutely set the tone was the moment he put on LinkedIn that he was leaving the army and was joining my business. We were bombarded with emails going, Rachael must be so relieved that you're coming in to take over.
Oh my gosh, I've just sucked all the air out of the office.
Yeah, amazing.
Oh my God, isn't that just...
And I'd set the business up and run it for 15 years by then.
I know. It's just, honestly, the fact that people could still say things like this. I was speaking to somebody the other day and she said she applied for a job as the chief executive of a charity. And when she went into a meeting with the board, somebody on the board turned around and asked if her husband had given his blessing for her to take this role. I know your eyebrows just left your eyebrows just left your forehead then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's not good.
No, I know. So there is still a lot of this around. Now, having just done this very sort of feminist bit here, this doesn't matter whether you're male or female here.
Absolutely.
It's completely irrelevant. If you start off, and we've used the term business, and I very much wasn't a limited company back in the day when I first started.
Yeah.
But it's still a business. It's still, you're buying, particularly in property, buying assets and making those assets work for you and making a profit and paying tax at the other end. That's the definition of a business, whether it was in a limited structure or not. It's your thing. And I don't know how you feel about this, but it was my thing. How do I then, my idea, I'm a bit of a control freak. So, my way or the highway type of thing. How do you start that process, either to invite someone or to be asked of someone? And I suppose there's 2 different ways. If you're inviting, you might have done more of the thinking, but if you're being asked, can I join? I don't know what Jeremy did.
Yes, well, I took Jeremy to join me in my office in Stoke-on-Trent, and we live in Suffolk. so that he would be completely immersed in my world to begin with. We knew we weren't going to be there forever, but it was weekdays we were there. And I have run big departments for, when I was in corporate, and I just thought induction. That whether or not he may think he knows everything, but he doesn't. And I knew that he had a very set routine. He's been in the army for 33 years. So I had to, at the beginning, have my day structured to his day so that we had coffee at the same time and lunch at the same time and tea in the afternoon at the same time. For the first week, it was, right, this is how we do this. This is how we do that. This is how we do the other. And we only started to change things when it became apparent that he wasn't able to do it the way I wanted it done, because it just wasn't in his skill set or mindset to do it in that way.
Mm. And it's interesting that you bring up mindset, because that's a huge part. You can be married to this person, you could have had your children with this person, or be planning to marry this person and have children with them, or be blood relatives, your brother, your sister, whatever. That doesn't mean to say that you think the same way at all.
No. So of course, having set this up on my own, being a solopreneur, I knew everything had to be done by me. There were no tasks that I could say, don't do that. It had to be done. Whereas he had spent his entire life having a man in a back room who would scoop up whatever he didn't like doing. So he would make the decisions and someone else would process them, all this kind of thing. And he just could not get the fact that if you leave things for too long, they become a mountain. And then you take twice as long to unravel the mountain and get it sorted out. So it was just, it was bizarre. It was all the little things that caused friction. And I would be thinking, well, how does he not know how to do that? How does he not know that we have, it's like follows day. That's what you do. And of course, why should he know? So it really was a two-way process of trying to work out what we needed to address.
And how did you get it where, instead of sort of like not banging heads, but how did you get it so that you merged in with one another? That I think, in a way, where you just described being the solopreneur, you do all the roles, and I've very much done that. I could do some of the roles a lot better than others, I know I'm really good at the organizing and I'm really good at the analysis, but I'm less good at the hard sell, all of that sort of stuff. How did you get to the stage where you go, okay, well, I'll do these bits and you do those bits?
Well, straight away, I was very lucky because Jeremy was used to having prayers Monday morning in the army without fail. Bullets could be flying, but the meeting still has to go ahead. So Monday morning, it always was the case. What are we doing this week? Blah, blah, blah. And it's at that point someone goes, well, I can't do this and I can do that. And you go, right, okay. And it became very apparent that there were some things that just weren't working. And I was inclined to go, well, I don't actually care who does it, as long as it happens. So some of the things I really don't like, clearly he's much better at. So I would just take them out of the scenario. Instead of saying that's part of that job, it gets divided. He can do that, and I will pick up the bits he's bad at. So I'm quite happy to look in the morning and go, okay, who's emailed us? What do I need to print off the account? Blah, 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 and just sort that out. Whereas he'd rather actually poke his eye out than do that. So it was just much easier to work out what was going to cause the friction and eliminate it, not try and change him or to change me, but actually to deal with the thing that was causing the friction.
Yes. And I think the thing is that if you've been someone who's been in control and doing it all, if you actually look at it and go, okay, so now I've got this new resource coming in and they're really good at A, D, and F.
Yeah.
Then you just give them A, D, and F rather than trying to make them do A, B, C, which is not what they're good at. And I suppose in some ways, maybe an even trickier question is, why are they coming into the company if they're not going to add anything to it? If they're not going to take any of the weight off your shoulder and do it better than you're doing, what's the point of them actually working with you? And if you have this conversation before you get there, then life can be a lot smoother, can't it?
Yes. And you have, I was very lucky because we have multiple companies because we were inheriting the family farm and all sorts of other things. So I knew that he wasn't going to be with me 100%. Once we got into doing the farming bit. So I knew I had him for a very short space of time, 100%. So I had to get my company to get the benefit of him, that he can then move off and do other things, but I still got him in the mix.
Yes.
And we're now almost 10 years down the line. And yes, he does do an awful lot in my property business. but only the bits that he's really good at, because I
Yes.
really don't want to have to mop up problems behind the scenes or
No.
behind anything else. So that's what we did. We then restructured as to what he was good at and what I wanted him to be good at. And then he goes off and does his own thing. Two
Mm.
happy people, one happy
Yes.
couple.
Well, that's it. And staying one happy couple at the other end of it,
Yeah,
because I think forcing someone to do the bits that they don't like is
yeah,
actually just going to ricochet back into the personal side of the relationship. And I know we're talking about husband and wives and partners at the moment, but easily you could be two sisters, two brothers, you could be an
yep,
aunt and a niece. What you don't want to do is have something that was working fine, you bring somebody else in, you mess it up, but not only do you mess up what was a good business, you then messed up a personal relationship. And then this can also apply to friendships as well. I mean, when we started our partnership, we brought together, so there was Bob and I, then my sister and his brother-in-law, so the four of us. And we started off with, we would have, we called them board meetings, but we were basically sitting around the kitchen
yeah,
table and we had a flip chart and, standing at the flip chart, right, what are our goals? I mean, going all the way back to some of the basic stuff that
yeah.
I knew through like my NLP and my mentoring training and everything else. What is it that we want to achieve? What do you want to achieve? Everybody just write it down on a piece of paper and then let's share it. Right. Okay. So we're all driven by making cash flow. Really
Yep.
handy because that's what we're here for. Would have been a bit
Yes.
awkward if someone didn't want that. But, and then who's going to do which job? And everything went really well over the first 3 months. We'd agreed everything. Everybody had their roles. They were still working full time in like proper jobs. They were still working
Yes,
full
proper
time in proper
jobs.
jobs, and I was like swanning around in a proper job,
Yeah.
which they didn't. I don't think they fully appreciate how hard I was working, and at the end of it was like, well, hold on a second. You were going to take responsibility for this. You were going to take responsibility for that. And in the end, I actually did it the other way around in that I pulled it all back.
Yeah.
I just kept hold of it. And they were sort of in the end dormant partners. They put the cash in at the beginning and they were just dormant partners in that for I think 15 years while we had that business before, we then pulled all our money back out, took
That
our profits.
that works if the people are happy to do that.
Mm,
It's very interesting because we, of course, the farm is actually contracted out to a family firm, and it's been like that for 40 years. And the generation that started it are now my age, and they're bringing the next generation on in, who are the young physical farmers. And the first time the youngster appeared at the boardroom table for the biannual sort of meeting, just chattering away, he was definitely there, but no one really took much notice of him. He'd throw in the odd bit. And the difference 6 months later, when the next meeting happened, when they'd already, they were now treating him as a person. He was no longer, the next generation. He was a fully fledged member. Then we've had the third meeting since then, and he's now actually he's leading and going, well, actually, my experience is. And it's been really interesting to see the fact that the older generation are now stepping back and going, no, we want you to do this. This is brilliant. You run with this.
mm.
But you've got to have humility in yourself and to know that, this may not be your shining moment. Others will do your business a lot of good if you just let them.
Yes. And that's really interesting because that dynamic there, that is the parent child,
Yes.
that older generation you're talking about and the younger farmer that's coming in, that's like mum and dad and son. And how do you bring in your children if you're going to make this a generational business? How do you
Yep.
bring in your children and let them excel at it? So, I already know with mine that my older daughter isn't interested at all. If I just bought some houses with my money and gave her the profit, then she would like property. But as far as putting her money in or anything else, she's quite happy going down the residential route and she's fine there. And then my other daughter knew that property was a good idea, but it didn't excite her at all. So we had several goes and she would come up to London, to Liverpool with me rather, and we would look around the houses. And because she'd done lots of practical building work when she was a lot younger with Bob, she knew stuff, she spotted stuff, she was really good at understanding the younger market, but it didn't excite her. And I think you've got to accept as a parent, as much as you might want to pass this on, this might not be what your child wants to do. Even if your child is 20, 30 or 40 now, they might not want this. And as you say, that humility, it sort of goes almost like both ways. One, recognize that if they do take it on, they might actually do it better than you. But also, just because you're very proud of what you've created, be humble enough to know that they have other plans and they're going to go on and create something great for themselves, and that then you've got some sort of other exit strategy that you're going to have for your businesses. Oh, you look like you froze there a minute, Rachel.
Yes, just give me 2 seconds and I will go and hit the box. There must be a wind blowing, so hold on.
Okay,
hold on.
hit the box.
Sorry.
So let's sort of move us on a bit. So we've talked about the pros and cons of bringing family in, and about not making your family member or your partner, or even this could apply to friends, do things they don't want to do, recognize they'll do things differently. Do you see that there is a difference between bringing blood into the family, as in a husband, a wife, someone you're about to marry, or children or other relatives, and just setting up or bringing in a friend into the business?
Yes, I think there is, because if you're bringing a family member in, you know where the skeletons are buried, and you do know who you're associated with, and you're legally and financially already in the mix together. And so if something fundamental happens, it is going to be seismic, and you'll just have to get on with it. The problem is when you have an outsider in, is that you don't know what's happening other than the bits you interact with. So you don't know what they're doing at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've got a couple of friends whose business partners frittered away the entire company on online gambling.
Oh,
and
dear.
it only came to light at the end of the day. I've had another one who basically sold the company from under them because they wanted to go and work with somebody else. They've been working together for 15 years.
Oh,
my friend thought everything was happy, everything was working well, very, they didn't want to grow, all that kind of stuff. But actually the other one did want to grow, but he didn't know how to tell him. So this all went horribly wrong. And it does come down to the fact that when you are working with a family member, as long as you've got the structure right, people can float in and out and you can replace them. But you can't say much if this is somebody from the outside.
Yes, because
they have significant others, of course.
Yes, that's really important. So even when I was talking about ours, and we had this group of 4, the brother-in-law and the sister actually had different plans that they wanted for their money, which is why we knew we were only doing it for 15 years, and we started that all at the beginning. But I've also spoken to people where, even whether they're family or whether they're friends, as you say, one changes the plan, and how you can have that conversation. I think for me, I was just speaking to, well, in fact, the last 2 calls that I've done with clients have had that very similar theme. It's quite interesting that I booked us in to have this call, and then today's calls have all gone down that route anyway. And one is where they are working with a brother, but the brother is thinking of selling the business and they don't want to sell the business. And I asked them the question, have you sort of done a values exercise? I know you're family and I know you've known one another sort of basically your entire lives, but have you looked at what your values are? Because just because you come from the same bloodline doesn't mean to say that you value the same thing. So I know with my sister and I'm all about the holidays. I'm quite happy to be spending money because, life's too short not to. I know that I've got in place things that will protect me in the future, but I don't want millions of quid in the bank. I don't want flashy cars. I just want holidays because I want to create the memories. But that's not her approach. And so on one of the pieces of business where it's just me and Bob, and another piece of the business where it's just me, and then another piece of the business where it's me and her, each of the businesses behaves in a different way because there are different people involved. But then when you get to the point where it's just family, which is the 2 girls that I was speaking to just earlier, they're just, without being rude, they're just work colleagues. They may be really good friends. They've come from different countries. And I just said to them, one of the first things I would do is some values exercises. What are your values? What matters to you? What's important to you? And then use it as a talking point to compare with one another and see whether you are fit. It's almost, I don't know whether they ever did this in old days in marriages, but if you're going to be a marriage matchmaker, I need to know. I need to know you and I need to them. Yeah.
And you've both got to have the same expectations and understand what's going to happen when you want out. And actually, there will always be an end. And most people don't think about the end when they start a company because, why do I need to think about that? Well, you really do, because what are you going to do? If it's just you can do anything you like.
Yes.
But if there's anyone else involved, be it a family member or, this non-family member, then you've got to get it right, because otherwise disaster is going to strike. And the classic with property is the family who set up, mummy and daddy make this lovely business and they've got lots of buy-to-lets in there. It's all creating lots of money. It's fantastic. And then they go, and we're going to pass it on. You've already highlighted the fact that one child is vaguely interested and the other one isn't at all. Suddenly they're given this monster job to do. And it's got financial complications and they've got to find money to inherit it. And they're really not interested. And so it all just goes to ratchet. And then even worse are the families who go, well, we're going to divide everything equally. But one person's probably been working harder than everybody else and has then got to buy everybody out.
Yes.
And then the ones who are being bought out sitting there going, come on, we know this is worth millions, pay us out. And the ones who are doing the paying out are going, actually, it's not worth millions and I'm doing all the work and I'm really trying hard. But this isn't the moment to sell because I know my market.
Yes.
So it's absolutely fraught. And so you have to get a prenup in place before you start, basically.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, we were family and we effectively had a partnership agreement between us. We talked about what if one of us dies prematurely. So we took out insurance policies, a bit like key man insurance that you have at corporates. But basically, it was a life insurance policy that we stuck into trust for the benefit. And what we did was we made the company paid for the life insurance. It paid out the family member because it was too complicated to do it the other way around. And the family and the will said that the properties remained with the three that were there. And the reason we did that was we knew that one of the family members didn't want to inherit. So they didn't want to be left with a property portfolio. They'd much rather have the value. So we did that. But then we also did that. Well, what if one of us wants to leave? And so here's 4 of you. One of the musketeers wants to give up. What's the process for the musketeer backing out?
Yes.
It's like, well, you offer it to the other 3 and you give the other 3 an opportunity. You can't force anything and it has to be by agreement. And as you've talked, particularly with property, there might be a timing issue in the market. So
yes, and it is really important. It's almost, the structures are all there if you've done business before. So it is forgetting the word property and going, this is a business, full stop. So what you've just described almost as a management buyout. And you've just got to realize that yes, property is great, it's so exciting and you can make so much money and we can all get terribly carried away with it, and it's a business and you have to be absolutely cold-hearted about what is going to happen in this scenario and in that one and what happens where and who and money and everything else.
Yes. And of course,
if that's in place, you can do anything.
Yes. And of course, if you don't, then you end up like other people that I've spoken to 5 years down the line, they're still, and they didn't even have a company. They just had bought a house together as a couple of cousins and they need to get out because they've not got on.
Yeah.
One wants to sell and the other one is the one that it feels aggrieved in some way. It's digging their heels in, will not allow the sale to take place, but also won't allow any works to go on, is actually causing the 2 of them financial harm, but for some reason has got the ump about something. And you never know what is going to upset someone. If it's going to go wrong, it doesn't just tend to go wrong a little bit, it'll go wrong.
And this is what really worries me when I'm talking to some of my students and clients who go, well, I've got this fabulous idea and this is what I'm going to do. I am going to have many, many, many joint ventures and I'm going to set up a company with each of my joint venture people and we're going to hold these buildings and they're just going to basically build something, buy something, do it up and then hold it for the long term. But before you know what's happened, they're in bed with 14 different people.
Yeah.
Financially. And so why on earth do you think that's a good idea? Because at some point, one of those is going to go wrong. Statistically, it has to.
Yes, absolutely.
If it doesn't, you're a doormat.
Yes. We were talking about this before we came on air. And the thing for me about that person we were talking about with all these businesses is, what's the thought process? What is the bigger strategy here? This is the thing that always interests me. So you're going to start off, you want to invest in property. A classic way to do it, particularly if you're a high rate taxpayer, is to set up one limited company in which you're just going to plop houses. So I've got some money, I'm going to buy a house. Got some money, I'm going to buy a house. And you end up with one company, and that one company might have 5 houses in it, as sort of we did in our family. And then I might invest with my sister, and it's only my sister and I in there. So we'll have another little property box, and in that property box we'll only stick properties that we have bought with our money, but that's fine. And then, as I said, we did a foursome, so we had another little property box in which money that the 4 of us got to. So we did end up with 3, but there was a reason, because one had 2 of us in, one had 4 of us in, and one had a different 2 of us in. That's it. But otherwise we would have just had them all in the same company, and that worked well for the shares and everything else. If you then start doing joint ventures with people, and just to explain a joint venture, so a joint venture is literally a venture, a business between the 2 of you, a joint way of doing it. And usually what happens is that one of you has got the cash and one of you has got the time. That's usually the way it works. Sometimes you might both have some money and you might both have some time, but there's usually an imbalance in it. That's often when they're set up in this sort of way we're about to speak about. And so in this particular case, let's call them the primary that we've been speaking about has plenty of time, and they believe that they found an area, and they believe that they found a system, and off they're poodling along with this. But what they don't do or don't have is enough cash that they can actually keep up the pace that they want to. They could do it a lot slower. They could probably do 1 property every year, but they want to move faster than that. So they either go out to friends or go out to family or go out to the general public, which is often what you start to see in the marketing. And they invite, and this is where we're going to use the example, they invite strangers in, and they say to this stranger, so here I am, I'm the primary, I have plenty of time, I want to buy more properties, I've got a good deal, I see an opportunity, I don't have the cash, I'm going to come along to stranger Rachel, and I'm going to say to Rachel, I've got this great deal. I know you've got a lot of money. If you give me your money, or let's put our money together, or you put your money into our company, then what I can do is I can do all the work, and then we'll remortgage in it. And at the end, what we'll do is we'll both own this property, and we'll be in a position where we'll split the rent at the other end. And you think, well, I'm very busy in corporate, or I'm very busy running my farm or whatever. That's a really good idea. I can make you use all your time to do this. But what you're missing, depending on the type of the property, let's say you're buying something for 200 and maybe you're spending 50K to do it up. So, if you're lucky, these are the numbers. I'm just using it for as an example.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
250,000, and maybe you remortgage it at 350,000. So the mortgage is 350,000. Yes, you've got 75% loan. You can pull the money back out, which is great because that pays out person number 1, primary, Rachel. You get back your 250,000, and there's 100,000 minus, our deposits. There's a little bit extra cash there because of the 75% loan to value. And that little bit of money might go in the business or might be split out between us. But I, as the primary who's done the time, how have I earned my wages all the way through? I must have somewhere along the line in the 50,000 been charging you a project management fee, because otherwise I'm never going to get to eat. I've got no wages coming in. There's no fees for me at all. Or when we do the remortgage, you get paid out your 250,000 and I get what's left. Maybe that's the way we do it. And then we're going to share the rent as we're going along. Now, this is probably only going to work if we're doing houses of multiple occupancy or some of those higher income or higher value properties that are going to give off more cash flow. You don't really want to be getting into a business bed with someone for just a share of 350 quid profit. That's not worth the risk. Great. So we've done it. What I don't understand is why, as the primary, do I then go, okay, I'm going to do another one. Now I have to go to Sue or Fred or John. Why aren't you and I doing more? If we've done well, why have 14 businesses with 14 different people if you and I have done so well?
Yeah, it's about especially when I'm talking to my clients, and I've got one or two who are very set on this, and I'm going, who here is the really important person? And if they don't come back and go me, I say you've got a problem.
What,
Because
me as in them, the one you're speaking to,
absolutely one
as opposed to you, Rachel?
Yeah, absolutely. They should be the one doing, this is their business, their future, their dream. So that has to be the primary driver. So what are they getting out of it? And once they've got that clarity, it starts to be more obvious about what you're going to have to do. It will be usually because you, as you say, you want to scale, but a lot more is going to have to be flipped and sold out in order to get the profit straight back than is actually kept in a limited company. Now, that doesn't work, of course, with all the market movements.
Yeah.
And there are times when selling out is not going to be an option, but that's when you have to think outside the box. So I know of a couple of people who have done incredibly well in property through doing that. But what they've done is not go, oh, well, oh dear, we can't sell the property. We're going to have to be in bed together forever and a day. See you in 20 years' time. No, they've gone, right, market's not right now. So in our agreement that we've set up, we've gone, no, we're going to have to go to rent. Yes, we're going to have to split the profits because after the first mortgage. But in 2 years' time, we're going to readdress this because this is when we're going to have the next lot of remortgaging. And on the next remortgage, I'm going and you're paying me out. Or we're selling it flatly. It's not an indefinite long piece of something that just goes on, piece of string that goes on forever. There is a set point at regular intervals where this is disbanded so that you can actually crystallize your profit.
So that's quite interesting because then if you are the cash introducer,
yep,
as opposed to, let's call you the labourer in the partnership, the one that's doing the work, you're going to get into a joint venture, fine, the other person's going to be doing all the work, and at the tail end, hopefully you're going to sell out and split the profit. That's all right if it, as you say, the times work, the numbers worked, everything worked fine. But this particular example I'm talking about is creating HMOs and staying in the relationship with people.
I don't understand that. There's too much risk down the line that you don't know about.
Because you're creating a long-term financial marriage with a complete stranger. So me as the primary, as the labourer in this, that seems fine because I'm in control. It's my system. I know the properties. I know what I'm doing. I'm getting into bed with you, who theoretically is someone who has a lot of money, but I don't know what other businesses you're doing. I don't know how good those businesses are. If we're using the farm as an example, but forget the farm.
But things do go down. Other people's companies go down.
Yeah, if the forge went bankrupt,
yes.
And then what impact would that have on the relationship we've had? If you don't deal with that as a director and you then get bankruptcy over there, then that's going to affect us. If you suddenly become bankrupt, we can't remortgage.
Absolutely. And COVID was a marvelous example of that because it hit hospitality big time. And there were lots of people I know who own portfolios that are predominantly hospitality, and they were banking money in another sector. So they were, they had amazing pubs, gastro pubs, the whole thing. Money was rolling in, taking that, banking it in small HMOs and everything else. Suddenly, hospitality stopped dead, and you didn't have this lovely flow of cash. And that caused problems amongst some of my clients. And, that's when you go, no, you can't just have an open ending sort of agreement. You've got to have, right, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. And sometimes you just have to sell to get out of the problem.
Yes. And sometimes that will just leave you with a break-even situation and not your profit. And if we then turn it the other way around, so what the heck is in this for the person with all the cash? So now we're talking about the money person. You're going to put $250,000 of your cash, in our example, into a company with a complete stranger, someone you've probably, oh, please God, have met a few times, done your research on, Worse, you're going to decide you like them, which is a very emotional thing,
Yep.
rather than you've properly checked them out and done your due diligence. So you're going to go into business with this stranger, the primary we had, and you're not going to earn any interest on your money in the first period while the refurb's on. And then when the refurb's done and you've got the property, you're then going to be splitting your profit with someone as a way of paying them back for their time, I assume.
Yeah.
Why didn't you just pay a sourcing fee? Why didn't you just work with someone to find you the deal, set up your own limited company and get the properties 100% in your name and get 100% of the rent? What I can't understand is, why would you, as a money person, joint venture with a stranger rather than work with somebody who was going to source the deal for you, find the deal for you, and own 100% of it?
I think it all comes down to the fact that the profits are so great at the front. So people get blinded to the problems coming up behind. And, out there in the property education sphere, there's lots of people teaching joint ventures, which is great. Love them. Done many myself. But they were doing them to enable themselves to get bigger portfolios, to get better cash flow and all sorts of other things. So at the end of the joint venture, that house was being sold, or it was being sold to the worker, or it was being sold out to the person who had the cash. There was a definite division of spoils straight away, which enriched either or the other person. It was really straightforward. The problem is when you are working with HMOs, you can see the cash flow is going to be amazing. You can see that there's going to be so much there. And not everyone can afford to do it on their own. And that's when you come up with but if I do it with someone else, it'll all work. And I'm always inclined to go, well, why don't you just borrow the money? Or if you're that good at property, why aren't you just doing something else short term to get the money you need to be able to own that HMO in your company for yourself?
Yeah.
Because actually that is a better long-term thing to do. It's not as sexy and it's not as fun short term, but long term it's much better for you.
It's about the race, isn't it? So sometimes this need to be as big as possible. I always remember one conversation I had with a man, and he didn't become a client because I think I probably put him off. And I said, "Oh, hi. So what's the plan? What are you thinking you want to do?" "I want to own 100 properties." "Okay. What sort of properties?" "Buy-to-lets." "Okay. Any reason why?" He said, "Well, 100 is a good number." Yeah, 100's a very round number. It's one of these numbers that can be divided by other numbers. But why specifically 100? Why not 50 or whatever? "Well, I would feel successful if I had 100 properties." I said, "You'll feel exhausted if you have 100 properties." I said, "Have you thought about it? These are all buy-to-lets. This is 100 families. And you're going to have to check 100 rents come in every month. And you're going to have to deal with 100, the taps dripping, the boiler's gone, 100 changes over. You're running a full-time business of your own, aren't you?" "Yes." "Why don't we start the other way around and go, why do you want to invest in property?" "Because I want more money."
Yeah.
This is the same reason we all do it, isn't it? And then how much money do you need? And what is the quickest way to get to that money without taking so much of your time? But going back to the joint venture thing, without putting yourself at risk.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is the people who are very successful at it, at doing joint ventures, are those who have incredible clarity on what they want out of it and how they're going to structure the deal. And they also go, I'm the one with the expertise. I'm the one with the time. If you want to work with me, here are my rules. If you don't like my rules, and that's disregarding the FCA ones, these are just about how you work. Then I'm afraid you're going to have to move on and go and find somebody else. And they will so that person didn't joint venture with them. They will then go and hunt down the next person who possibly has got money to invest with them. And that is their driving factor. They don't find someone and go, "Oh, thank God, at last, someone with some money that I can work with. Let's make this work." No, it's back to you. What are you wanting to work out of it, and how do you go forward? It's really important.
But if I listen to that as someone who is borderline anti-JVs without, properly vetting this person, if I listened to that and I listened to your approach to joint ventures, I'd be thinking, well, so how important am I? I'm just a money bag to you. Do you actually care what I get out of this? You're doing this for your residents. That's lovely. but what are you doing for me? I'm
And
giving you all my money.
that's where it works brilliantly if the person with the money understands property, or you can communicate with them what property is all about, and that they realize that they can't do this on their own. What you've got as the doer is really special. And the fact is that they can see that you have got a deal that is worth working with. If you've got a mere deal, frankly, that just does, then go and look for someone else. But again, I know lots of people who are in that position. And one of the reasons they go with someone who's so forward and clear and everything else is they know they're going to get delivery on it. Their money is safe because that person is completely invested in what they are doing, and has a track record usually. And, and they are also open to the possibility, a joint venturer who's got money will be looking at this going, I could lend him that money. So why am I doing a joint venture?
Yes.
What is it in these rules and regulations and in this deal that makes it better as a joint venture rather than as a straightforward loan?
And that for me is the point at which you have experience. You not necessarily property experience, but money experience, that you can ask that question. Why would I? So I've got three choices. I can lend it to you, I can pay you to do it for me, source, or I can do it with you in a joint venture. And really what you want to be looking at is, as the money person, what's going to give you the best security and the best return on your money, bearing in mind that you don't have the time to do this for yourself. And I think if you start asking those questions, and then if we bring all this way back to the family, what's the point of the family member coming in? And I think the family person has to be saying, shall I just put some of my family money into this and just let Rachel or Vicky carry on doing it? So like in one of mine, they just, in the end, I had the money and I carried on doing it. Or am I actually interested enough in this that I want to work alongside them? I might not be able to put in 30 hours a week like they are, or 40 hours a week like they are, but I am going to put in time every week to have a meeting, to know what's going on, to maybe like you've described with Jeremy, where he's now moved on and he's working with the farm, but he'll still come back and he'll still have his smaller section of
he still has his section, which he does. I don't do that.
But I think you've got to really understand, again, it's always this question, why would you do this? And once you know why you would do this, what is it that you want out of it? And then build the relationship for there, build the relationship with, are we aligned in our values? Have we thought about, what can go wrong and looked at all the risks? And have we written all of that in a document? And are we happy to proceed? And then move forward.
It is a courtship. It really is. You've got to be open and transparent and have conversations that a lot of people feel very awkward with. But it is, yes, you may, as the person who is the doer wanting money, find that you're not being very successful very early and as quick as you want, but you will be better at it and be more successful if you just go, I'm looking for that ideal fit. It's as important if you're dealing with somebody else's money to be perfectly aligned as it is my, husband, wife, or boyfriend. You'll feel just as aggrieved if the money goes wrong, if you're maritally connected to them, whether it's just somebody else's money. And the other thing, of course, that everyone forgets is that we live in a very small world. Now, if I run off with your money, Vicky, you are going to make sure everybody knows about it.
Yes. And we hear a lot of that, don't we? I mean, you and I often, when we meet for lunch, we'll have a little chat about who's the latest one that's done the naughty with somebody else, and in terms of, taking their money and left, and who's suing who. And there's a lot of that actually is very public in the property world, because we all mix with one another. So we all know the story. So your reputation is gone. And I think the thing for me there that really hit home was this conversation, that word about courtship. I would go, it's even more than a courtship, because without being rude, courtship, we date. As long as we don't get married, it's not too bad. But a courtship that results in us getting married is a more serious affair, because the only way out is a divorce. A courtship that results in children, with or without marriage, is a lifetime commitment. And you've just got to know that when you do joint ventures or you bring people into your business, that it is this potential lifetime financial commitment
Yeah.
unless you know specifically that it is a 2-year deal and that within 2 years it's sold and you're back out the other end. So
Yeah. And it is also, I hate to say it, it is, you've got to look past the exciting profit.
yes,
What's over the other edge of profit? What is out there?
yes,
And then sometimes you will just go, it's not worth it.
no, you
Or
have
it's
to
a
look at the
match made
risks.
in heaven, and yes, I'll work with you for 10 years.
Yes, yes, very definitely. I mean, I've certainly had people where they've gone again. So they've done the
Yes,
deal,
again.
they've sold it
Yep.
out, they've gone again, or they've done the deal, they've remortgaged, they've got their money back, and they've in a sense, relent it again. But then you would be seeing the same, more properties popping into the same companies because you're doing it again and again and again, rather than necessarily setting up with
But I think
millions
also
of
it's very important to remember that it's not just you. You've got HMRC as part of this relationship. And you've got the FCA as part of this relationship. And those are two really big organizations that can ruin it for you if you get it wrong.
Yes.
And you've got these rules that you can't just bypass or just go to the lawyer and have something else, written up instead. They have to be adhered to, and you just have to make sure that you're working as you really ought to be.
Yes.
To be quite blunt, there are some people working in property who shouldn't be.
Yes.
They don't work with them.
No, I would agree with you there. So, on a bright note, that if you have started in property and you want to bring in a family member or a friend or whatever, it is possible, but just think about what you're getting into, why you want this, why they might want that. Talk. Don't just decide it and do it next weekend. Talk about it for months if necessary, in order to make sure that you're really very much aligned. And then I would say, and I'm sure you would agree, Rachel, put it in writing, put down what you said in writing, and both get it signed so that you've got that as an agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. Because actually, you mentioned right at the beginning about this, about board meetings. If you are running a company, you have to, no matter what kind of company, you need proper due diligence and to be able to have board meetings that say, this is what the company is doing, because it's not you, it's the company. This is what the company is doing, and we are all signed up to that. So
Exactly.
that is exactly what you have to do when you bring on somebody on board, is go, this is what you're doing, this is why you're doing it.
And of course, what we haven't even touched on is if it's a limited company and you're both directors, you've actually got fiduciary duties. So you need to understand how this company is performing, because you have a legal responsibility to only trade when you know that the company can follow through on its promises. If that company can't follow through on its promises, so say, for example, the money hasn't been taken care of properly, and now there's a builder doing some work, and you engage the builder, but you know that you don't have the money to do it, or maybe you don't, the other one knows that there isn't the money to do it, you're as equally responsible for not being able to pay that builder in terms of your failed duties as a director. And that can have, again, huge consequences. It's not just if you were the primary and it's your reputation in the property world, but if you are the money giver, your future businesses, your other businesses, and the rest of your life, really.
Yes, because I think that many people are in themselves extremely honourable. They have very strong values about what is and isn't acceptable. And it never occurs to them that the other person may not be quite the same. I've had clients who have lost quite large sums of their clients' money and have been completely comfortable with that. And when I've questioned them, they've just looked at me in somewhat horror and gone, but it's business. They knew their money wasn't safe. It was my limited company. End of. Horrified me.
Yeah. Oh no, me too. Yes.
But
I would agree with you.
That is something that I think more people go into, not realizing that, yes, it's in a limited company, but in some ways that's even less safe than lending somebody some money.
Yes. Yeah.
So it is down to those two little words, due diligence, isn't it?
Yes.
Whether,
very
no
much
matter
so.
whether it's a family or a stranger partnership of any description.
Right. Brilliant. I love talking about this stuff. We should stop now because our poor listeners will be exhausted and probably need a cup of tea. And we'll pick this up. We'll have another topic that we will pick up, because I love speaking to Rachel. I'm sure that you, as the listener, are getting massive value out of listening to these conversations, and I hope you are. And of course, if you've got questions, then drop us a line. You're going to be able to find all Rachel's contact details in the show notes for the podcast. And of course, Rachel runs her own brilliant podcast called The Property Solopreneur. So if you're already listening on iTunes or Spotify, then make sure that you go and check out her podcast as well.
Thank you very much. Incidentally, you'll find Vicky stars on a few too.
Yes, I have indeed starred on a few. So what I'd like to just start off with, or finish off with, is saying thank you very much. I hope that Rachel and I have both been able to put a little bit of whoosh into your lives and make you think twice, not as in think twice as in a bad way, but make you think twice. Think once and then think again about who you bring into your business, how you create your business, what sort of a business that you have, how you deal with money, who you deal with for money. And that will make such a difference to the quality of the sleep that you get for the rest of your life, not to mention the final financial outcomes that come out of there. Rachel, it just leaves me one more. Thank you for your time.
No, well, thank you very much for inviting me on. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Well, you're probably going to get the gold badge now because I think you've been on the most at the moment. There's a little bit of competition with a few people that are like my repeat guests because they've given so much value. I like to keep these quite short. I think we've gone long today, but I think it will be worth it. I think it's worth it to the listener. Thank you very much, everybody. Make sure that you tune in again next week. Of course, subscribe. Please leave a review. My name is Vicky Washay. Thank you very much. And I will be speaking to you again soon. My mission is to help people like you understand what a wealthy life truly entails. Together, we'll identify your ideal lifestyle, leverage your resources to generate the necessary income through property investment, whether by teaching you how or by managing the process on your behalf. Let's inject some momentum into your wealthy life plans as you subscribe now to capture every episode of the podcast, and then get in touch via my website, book a call. All of the details are in the show notes.